We usually think of a city as a village that simply kept growing. But looking at the earliest urban centers, that progression isn't natural at all. It requires a massive, deliberate, and often painful demographic shift to pack thousands of people into a tight footprint. Before anyone can even consider living in these dense clusters, there has to be an agricultural surplus. A community must produce enough extra food so that a large portion of the population no longer has to farm, freeing up their labor for other tasks. But that surplus comes with severe biological and social costs. High-density living breeds disease. It creates massive congestion. It introduces the tyranny of distance, the enormous physical burden of transporting food from the fields to the urban center, using only human power. A successful surplus introduces a secondary threat, too. A peaceful, productive settlement quickly becomes a high-value target for raiders and thieves looking to steal that stored wealth. The drawbacks of early urban living were punishing. People didn't subject themselves to this friction by accident. The very first cities were engineered solutions designed to counter highly specific, localized threats to their survival. Take Jericho, situated in the Jordan Valley around 8400 BC. This site held a population of roughly 2,000 people. Jericho sat on highly fertile land right at the junction of major travel routes. That made their accumulated agricultural wealth a constant, convenient target for organized attacks by local hunter-gatherer bands. This cross-section schematic shows their response. They built a 7-meter-tall, 3-meter-thick wall, surrounded by a 9-meter-wide, 3-meter-deep ditch. Constructing this required astronomical labor. Workers scooped solid rock at the base using only the simplest of tools, like stone mauls, 5,000 years before metal existed. A single household facing a raiding party with bows and spears would be easily overwhelmed. By pooling their labor to build a massive public fortification, the residents of Jericho created a defense system that was mathematically far more efficient than trying to protect their individual private wealth. Moving to the 6th millennium BC, we find Çatalhöyük in present-day Turkey. This was a significantly larger settlement, holding around 5,000 people. Their economy ran on exporting obsidian tools. Shaping this volcanic glass requires immense, highly specific neuromuscular coordination that takes years to learn. This 3D diagram shows their bizarre architectural solution for protecting this industry. Houses were built entirely back-to-back. There were no ground-level doors. Instead, the exposed walls formed a solid perimeter, and residents entered through the roof using retractable ladders. This forced physical density deterred thieves, but it also served a secondary purpose. By keeping their workshops locked together in adjacent homes, skilled workers created a tightly connected environment to closely observe and pass down complex tool-making techniques to new generations. That extreme physical density was mirrored by a shared cultural density. We see this in artifacts like this seated clay figurine, representing the religious iconography they kept directly inside their packed shrine rooms. Çatalhöyük utilized its high-density urban planning as an incubator. By keeping skilled workers and their valuable resources physically bound together, they forced innovation and secured their monopoly on regional trade. By the 4th millennium BC, Uruk in southern Mesopotamia reached a staggering population of 50,000. It sat in an arid environment with rich agricultural potential, but completely lacked essential raw materials like metal and hardwood. To survive, they desperately needed to organize interregional trade. But writing and currency did not exist yet, making complex barter across long distances incredibly difficult to track. The solution was the temple economy. Early religion operated as an administrative technology. The Sumerian belief system framed the gods as hungry ecosystem managers who dictated the weather and crop yields, and who required continuous human labor to keep nature functioning. This belief system solved the free rider problem, the economic hurdle where individuals won't voluntarily give up a portion of their harvest for a public good if they can reap the benefits without contributing. This chart shows how that centrally planned economy operated. The temple collected the agricultural surplus from the population. It used that wealth to organize labor for massive irrigation projects, trade locally produced textiles for foreign copper and timber, and distribute survival rations to workers. Ancient religion in Uruk operated as an economic engine. It allowed a massive population to rapidly scale trust, to efficiently organize labor, and administer a public distribution system long before anyone had coined a piece of money. Jericho, Çatalhöyük, and the cities of Babylonia show us that early urban centers were designed as engines for collective action, built to handle specific bottlenecks in defense, trade, or administration. Getting thousands of people into a city is one challenge, but keeping that city alive across centuries of drought, war, and economic turbulence is an entirely different problem. Looking at 24 different Mesoamerican cities founded between 1000 and 300 BCE, researchers noticed a clear divergence. Some settlements collapsed rapidly, while others, like Monte Alban, thrived for over 1,300 years. This timeline chart illustrates their primary finding. The data shows that cities ruled by autocratic, despotic leaders with stark disparities in wealth reliably collapsed much faster than their peers. The cities that survived for millennia shared two distinct traits. They relied on collective governance, and they maintained heavy, continuous investment in shared public infrastructure, like massive open plazas and interconnected residential spaces. From the walls of Jericho in 8400 BC to the open plazas of Mesoamerica, the data holds up. A city only survives the brutal friction of high-density living when its infrastructure and governance actually serve the public good. Human endurance has always been a collaborative project.